What is going on, men? I hope you are doing good. And as you know, we started our new book this week, Developing the Leader Within You. And I'm excited about this because that's one of the things I am passionate about is developing other leaders. And this week we're talking about the first two chapters. The first chapter is the definition of leadership. And if you've read any of the book, you know that the definition that John Maxwell goes with is influence. Leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. It's our ability to move people into action. And there's a fine line when it comes to moving people into action. We've talked about this before, but you can motivate people or you can manipulate people. Both cause people to move. But the heart of it is the difference maker. And the heart of a true leader, a true influencer, is the heart for the people, and it motivates people. What is your heart? Is it all focused on you, or is it about the common good and moving other people into their potential? And that's what we want to work on over the next few weeks, is developing the leader within you, and then we'll kind of build upon that into how do you develop other leaders. And this week, definition of leadership is influence. And if you've read through it, he talks about the 5 levels of leadership or the 5 levels of influence. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a teaching that I do sometimes whenever I go in to do work with companies ever so often. And I'll be using business setting kind of language, but just know you can use this in any relationship that you want to, because it's the 5 levels of influence, right? 5 levels of influence. So as I kind of go through this, what I want you to do is I want you to identify where you are. What level are you on, and how do you increase that level? How do you go up a level? So we know influence can be good or bad, right? Good or bad. Think about Michael Jordan. He had a lot of influence. You could say his influence was good, bad, or neither. You can look at Hitler. Had a ton of influence, or wasn't too good, right? So let's take a look at these 5 levels of influence. And the first level, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm also going to send this out in an email, and then also post it onto our Facebook page where you can check this out here. But this is just a little handout that I do whenever teaching on the 5 levels of leadership. And 5 levels of leadership, first level is position. That means you've got a title and you've got a position. And as you can see right here, it's a great place to visit. But hey, you don't want to live right here. So you've got a title and a position. Here's what I want you to know about having a title and a position is that somebody somewhere along the line saw talent and potential within you, and they gave you a title and a position. If you're an entrepreneur, the fact that people come to you to do business with you is that you may have a title and a position. So you can kind of see right here some of the pros is you've achieved the right to lead. Someone has recognized your potential. It's a good starting point. But really, all a title and a position does, it invites you to the leadership table. It's an invitation to the leadership table. And your invitation isn't an opportunity to kind of kick back and throw your feet up and chillax. It is an opportunity to come to the table to either gain influence or to undermine your influence. It buys you time. First job out of college, I was working at it was a rehab hospital in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of the hierarchy there, we had a rehab director, we had a physical therapist, we had a physical therapist assistant, and then under the physical therapist assistant is what we call a rehab tech. And our tech, her name was Yvette, and Yvette was awesome. But Yvette's job was not awesome, because Yvette's job would be something like, hey, Yvette, hey, Mr. Smith, he pooped his pants. Can you take him back and get him cleaned up? You know, it wasn't an awesome job. But in that job, our rehab director, she was the leader, but she led with her title and her position. She would often go into her room, her office. She would shut the door, isolate herself from everybody else. She would also use her title to get things done. It was one of those things where you have to do this. On level one, people follow you because they have to. See, if we didn't follow her, then bad things could happen. And she used that to her advantage. She would also often put her work off on other people, the things that she was responsible for doing. She would give that to other people, not in an empowering way. Okay, we'll talk about that some too. But it was an attempt just to kind of go back and isolate herself and just to kind of hang out. And because of that, the energy in the entire place was low, and the most energy of the day was at about 4:55 when you'd slowly kind of start creeping to the bathroom to use the bathroom on the company's time because you had 5 more minutes. And as soon as it hit 5, we were gone, right? That was the most energy in the entire place was at 5 when we were hovered over that checkout, the time clock thing. We'd skeet out, right? That's the most energy in the whole place. And because that was the culture that was created, we lost our best therapist and we attracted the most mediocre. Because here's what I want you to understand is you're going to attract not what you want, but who you are. We attract who we are, not what we want. If I'm building a team, guys, if I'm building a team, and if I'm a solopreneur right now, or if I've got a small team and I want to build a team and I want some 8s, some 9s, and some 10s, but if I'm just a 5, ain't no 8, 9s, and 10s going to come be on my team, because nowhere in the history of the world has an 8, a 9, or a 10 ever willfully followed a 5. And if they did, it was not for very long, right? So we're going to attract to us who we are, not what we want. So if we want 8, 9s, and 10s, then we're going to have to grow to be some 9s and 10s. Okay? All right, didn't mean to sidetrack there. But here's what I want you to understand is in that place, the person with the most influence was Yvette. Yvette, our tech. Because if we were in a business meeting, we were trying to make a decision on what to do or supplies to buy, all heads would turn to Yvette to see what Yvette wanted to do. If a doctor was making rounds and he was going to go into a patient's room, he wanted Yvette by his side because Yvette had the influence. So what I realized about that first job was that leadership, guys, leadership is not about titles and positions. It's about influence. Okay. So level one is position. People follow you because they have to. How do you move up to the next levels of leadership? Well, the way you move up from level 1 to level 2 is you got to start developing relationships. You got to start to get to know the people that you are leading. I've got it written right here for you. Stop using the title and position to get things done. Focus on making a difference in the lives of other people and stop thinking king of the hill. When I was young, we would play baseball. And at the baseball field, they had this big dirt pile. And we used to play that game, king of the hill, right? You'd start at the bottom of the hill and 3, 2, 1, go. You'd do everything you could to knock other people down. You'd trip them out. You'd elbow them, pull them back down, face plant them right where you could be the only one to make it to the top. And guys, I think a lot of people think about leadership in the same way. And that's not leadership. Leadership is I'm going to the top of the mountain. Come go with me. I'm going to take you up. All right. So how do you move from level 1 to level 2? Develop relationships. Level 2 is permission. Permission. People start following you because they want to, not because they have to. There's this transition that happens as people move from I have to I want to, from I got to I get to, right? The phrase that you guys have probably have heard, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's what happens when you make the transition from level 1 to level 2. You start caring about the people you lead, and then they start following because they want to. They give you permission to lead them. Level 2 is permission. You can't lead people until you like people. So the question too I have for you is, do you care about people? Do you care about the people that you lead? If you've got a small team, think about this as you start bringing in people on your team. The heart of a leader is you have to care about your people. I tell this sometimes that I get people call me, can you come in and do some tolerance training? But guys, Do you want to be tolerated? Do you want to be tolerated? Ain't nobody want to be tolerated. People want to be celebrated, right? So the heart of a leader, do you care about people? To me, this is real entry level leadership, right? Work is more enjoyable. There's an increase in energy. Trust and communication start to increase, and it focuses on the value of the people. People start moving, doing just the bare minimum. In level one, people do just enough not to get fired. And what you see happen on level two is people make this transition to going a little bit above and beyond what's required. I was a very good level two because I love people. I immediately start out at level two. I would ask our girls to come in on Saturdays or come in early or stay late, and they would do it in a minute. They didn't mind, right? Because I developed that relationship. Here's the deal though. This is a very low level of leadership, very low level of leadership. It's entry level leadership right here, okay? And at some point, you got to move beyond rainbows, unicorns, and fist pumps and bear hugs, right? You got to get some stuff done. So how do you move up from level 2 to level 3? Is you got to get some stuff done. Level 3, way to move up, relationships alone are not enough. You got to move beyond that, grow towards and with your team, and take risks to stretch your team. So level 3 is production. Right here, making things happen is what separates the real leaders from the wannabe leaders. People follow you because of what you've done together, what you've done for the team. So you guys can see all this, and you reading the book and all that kind of good stuff. I'm just trying to add some color to what you're reading and some personal stories. This is the first time I've shared this story, and the person I'm sharing the story about actually gets to hear it. So Tanny, my second job, favorite job I ever had outside of working for myself, was working with and for Tanny down in Jackson. We moved down to Jackson, Mississippi, and I was working in an outpatient physical therapy clinic there. And Tanny was one of the owners of that clinic. And Tanny was a level 3 leader. You don't leave behind the relationship component of level 2. He did a great job of developing relationships in the clinic. Outside the clinic, we would have fun. The energy was high. We would do things outside the clinic. And but there was this fine line. There was this fine line of we still had to produce. But here's the thing. We wanted to produce because Tanny was producing. Tanny produced, and we wanted to produce as well. I can still remember we had this. Tanny was off one day doing who knows what, but he said he called it marketing. Who knows, right? No, Tanny. But Tanny was off, and this little old lady comes in. She got a little walker coming in, and she got a little smile on her face. And she got her smile on her face, and I said, "Well, good morning." She says, "Is Tanny here today?" And I said, "Hey, no, ma'am. It's your lucky day. You get the opportunity to work with me today." Smile left her face, and she said, "No, I'll wait on Tanny. I'll come back." Right? So everybody loved some Tanny. So production, having that fine line, we still have to produce. And we'll talk about this a lot more in other lessons and those kind of things. For me, this is a hard transition to make, moving beyond care to candor and balancing care with candor. I had a leader, one of my mentors tell me one time, he said, "Cory, you've got to make a decision. Or you want to be liked by everyone, or do you want to lead people? Because there's a difference. You're not going to make everybody happy, but if you can lead people out of love, then you can truly change some lives." So I want to show this too real quick. So production. I told you about my level 1 leader and level 3. And when I was working at that first job, the level 1 leader, she came to me one day and she said, "Hey, Cory, I want you to do this in service for the hospital. I want you to do this speech and teach the hospital. And here's what I want you to say. This is the topic I want you to do it on." And then she came back to me just a short time later and she said, "Hey, this is what I want you to say. I want you to do this topic, and this is what I want you to say. And I want you to say exactly what this says. So I take her little thing that she gave me and I went and presented it. And it fell flat and it wasn't any good. It wasn't any good at all. What I did was I started pointing the finger. I started casting blame. I said, who even wants to hear about this? Nobody cares about this topic. And who even talks like this? Nobody talks like this. This is boring. Nobody wants to hear this. I cast the blame on someone else instead of accepting responsibility. When I was working for Tanny, we had this doctor's office beside us, and they often did this monthly in-service for diabetic patients. And they came to our clinic and asked us if we would host it. And Tanny said, hey, I would like for you to do this. And by this time, I was used to being told exactly what to do. So I said, well, what do I do it on, right? What do I talk about? And he said, I don't know, whatever you want to do, whatever you think they need to hear. I said, well, what should I talk about? I don't know, whatever you think they need to hear. He said, tell you what, you work on it. I'll be here if you need me, but as you finish it, we'll sit down and we'll take a look at it. And if anything needs some modification, we'll do it, but I want you to take it on. I want you to present it. And y'all, I went and presented this, and I found that one, I really liked speaking. I didn't know that I liked speaking. I didn't know I liked presenting. And the other thing too is Tanny empowered me. He handed this off and said, you take it. And because he empowered me, I had nobody to point the finger at if it fell flat. If it didn't go good, I could not point the finger at somebody else. That's the difference in empowering and equipping. When we tell people what to do, how to do it, when to do it, it's always my idea. And they can always point the finger, well, it was Cory's idea. But if I empower them and give them guidance and hand it off to them, then they have to take ownership. See, I didn't take ownership the first time I wanted to point the finger. I didn't take ownership of the fact that I probably didn't prepare like I should have, that I didn't bring the energy that I should have, but I wanted to cast the blame. Second scenario, I had nobody to point the finger at other than myself. All right, here we go, guys. Let's move on. Level 3, 1, 2, and 3, low levels of leadership, guys. These are low levels of leadership, but you can still get stuff done. I told you I was a level 2 leader. We built $1 million business in a town of 1,100 people as a level 2 leader. Think about that. Think about that. So how do you move up to higher levels of leadership? Is realize that production and relationship alone is not enough, that people are your most appreciable assets. But let me tell you this, people are only your number one asset if you are taking the time to develop and invest in them. That's the only way they are your number one asset. So growing other leaders, this is when you start to move beyond getting stuff done and you start working through people. You start equipping people, empowering other people. Level 4 is people development. Helping individual leaders grow extends your influence. It sets you apart from most leaders. It assures growth. I like to call this the leadership bench, right? Back in the day when the Bulls were so good, you had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and their whole starting five was awesome. Even their sixth man could have been a starter somewhere else. It's because their bench was just as good. The bench could fill in. We want to develop a leadership bench within our teams, within our organizations, within our families, within this community. We want to develop a leadership bench, right? A leadership culture. You think about what immediately comes to my mind is FL Crane with Jim and his team. I guess, I don't know how many years ago, maybe a couple years, 1 or 2, 3 years ago, one of their very top leaders, one of their top 3 or 4 leaders suddenly passed away. So the question is, if one of your top 3 leaders passes away, what do? What happens? Do you have somebody that can step in? And that's the question that this answers, is you're developing people. Level 4 is where you move into developing people. People follow you because of what you've done for them. We'll come back to that here in a second. Moving up to level 5. Level 5 is Pinnacle. This is where I hope we can get to, guys. This is where I want us to get to. This is the whole reason we're doing this right here, is people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. This is the highest leadership accomplishment, is developing other leaders to be level 4 leaders. It's where you're investing in leaders who develop other leaders who develop other leaders. Pinnacle level leadership is a lifetime of developing level 4 leaders. When you're developing level 4 leaders, you are known outside of your business. You're known outside of your industry. You're known outside of your city or state or country. You're known outside of your lifetime. You think about people whose influence is going on before them. Obviously, Jesus, for sure, his influence is still going. But you also think about other men and women like Winston Churchill, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King Jr., people like that who have developed a legacy, right, of developing other level 4 leaders. I'm about to wrap up here, but I want to show you something really, really powerful. I want to go back to this level 4 because this is where we've got to get to, guys, is where we are developing other level 4 leaders. But there's a transition that has to happen. Let me see if I can get this pulled up for you guys. For us, let's see. Is when we start developing, here we go. Level 4 leaders. There's a difference between leaders who develop just followers and leaders who develop other leaders. See, leaders who develop other followers, they can grow. There's growth. I told you at level 2, we grew $1 million business. But your growth is slow and it's incremental and it's by addition. But if you want to grow by exponential amounts, if you want to grow by multiplication, then you got to develop leaders. You got to lead leaders. And here's, I want to show you this to, man, I hope you guys are watching this. I hope this is good. So, all right, here we go. Leaders who attract followers. They have a strong desire to be needed. This is leaders who attract followers, have a strong desire to be needed. We had our PT clinic in the big city of Manatee or Mantache. I love going to the Dollar General. I love going to the Mexican restaurant because I would walk in. I knew everybody there. They're like, oh, hey, Cory, that's the guy that helped me with my shoulder. That's the dude that helped my foot. Oh, that's the guy that's helped me get back to walking. Oh, that's the guy that helped me lose the weight. I had a desire to be needed. And my friends, that is not leadership. That is not leadership. Leaders who attract other leaders have a desire to be succeeded. They have a desire to be succeeded. Like I said, you're climbing the mountain, you're going down and grabbing other people by the hand and say, come up here, check out this view. And if you go to climb higher mountains, you go do your thing because I'm going to go back down. I'm going to get some other people and we're going to keep climbing together. They have a strong desire to be succeeded, not needed, okay? Succeeded, not needed. All right. Leaders who attract followers focus on the bottom 20%. The bottom 20%. We're going to get into the 80-20 rule in the next chapter, chapter 2 on priorities. But leaders who attract followers, they focus on the bottom 20%. How many of us in our businesses focus our time or spend our time on the bottom 20%? The people who are the loudest, the people with the most complaints, the people who are the hardest to deal with. Leaders who attract other leaders, though, they focus on the top 20%. They focus on their top 20% of people because what they know is if they invest in, if they develop, if they equip, and if they train the top 20%, then that top 20% is going to influence everyone else. They have now set the bar for everyone else, and they're going to bring up everybody else. What's the quote, rising tide rises all boats or something like that? There you go. All right, here's another one. This is another one that's really good. Leaders who attract followers, they treat everybody the same. You got to be fair. You're supposed to be fair. You got to be fair. Leaders who attract leaders, they treat everybody differently. Think about that. Leaders who attract leaders, they treat everybody differently. They treat people, speak to people the way that person wants to be spoken to. Think about it. If you got multiple kids, you can talk to one kid in one way and that the other child will not respond. But if you talk to this one in a different way, you figure out a way that they respond, right? Also, there's a John Maxwell talks this quote. He says, if you treat your eager beavers the same way you treat your lazy Larrys, eventually you're going to have a team of lazy Larrys instead of eager beavers, okay? The people on your team who want to grow, the people who are hungry, they want to be treated differently. You're not going to treat them the same. You don't want to treat somebody who's hungry the same way as somebody who's complacent and content. You can throw the fairness stuff out the window, guys. All right. All right. I'll quit getting off of seminar mode. Here we go. Let's keep trucking. All right. Leaders who attract followers, they spend time with people. They spend time. They shoot the breeze. They're developing relationships, but that's all it is. It's shooting the breeze. They're spending time with people. Leaders who attract leaders, they invest time with people. They are developing relationships, but there's an intentionality behind the time that is spent. As I'm sitting with someone and I think they've got leadership potential, I am developing the relationship. But what I'm listening for is I'm listening to their voice. I'm listening to their passions. I'm listening to what they're interested in. Because if I can figure out what they're interested in, I can also figure out where their giftedness lies. And then when opportunity comes down the road, I can empower them into that position. I'm also listening to kind of see where they're wanting to go. What's some of their goals? What are some of their dreams? What do they want to do with their life? I'm listening for those kind of things because I want to put them in a position to achieve their dreams, right? So I'm investing time with people, not just spending my time. There's an intentionality behind it. Leaders who attract followers grow by addition. Leaders who grow by or develop leaders, they grow by multiplication. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope this has added value to you guys. I could talk about this stuff all day. I love it. I'm all in and I want to invest in you guys. I expect the best out of you. I believe the best out of you and I want to see the best come out of you. I want to develop us all to be leaders who other people look at and say, I don't mind following that dude right there, right? Becoming men who other people willfully follow because of who you are and what you represent. That's what we're going to develop. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for trusting and coming on to Legacy Builders. And anyway, you guys have a great rest of the day. And we'll see y'all Thursday and Friday.